Hi guys, welcome back from Carly at the Herbathicary, and after a very eventful Christmas at my mum-in-law's, I am back home and full of cold. Now, as I always state, I am not a doctor, I'm not professionally trained, and all of my identifications are done myself and research into the medicinal benefits. I do advise you do the same before trying any of these and get yourself a good identification manual. So today I am going out foraging, looking for anything that is left after the cold snap. Although I am hoping that the birds have left over some rosehips for me to add to the ones I've frozen and make some rosehip syrup, which is packed with vitamin C and exactly what I need to help me get rid of this cold. My first find has evaded me all season, and it's almost serendipitous that I find it now when I need it the most. This rather disheveled looking Oxeye daisy was growing up my neighbor's fence. It is actually two sets of flowers, the one in the middle and then with all the little yellow flowers, they're all separate flowers, and then the petals that come off are actually separate flowers too. So I will harvest the few flower heads that are here, dry them in my airing cupboard, and make teas and tinctures for their benefits for colds, bronchitis and coughs. Now, after a really good rummage, through a lot of rubbish, I came across some dried Queen's Anne's lace or wild carrot. I'm going to see if I can get some root out of this one. But just next to it there are lots of fresh ones just started to come up, so hopefully next year I'll get some nice flower heads from those ones. But just a little bit further on I came across some young yarrow that seems to have survived, so I am going to be harvesting the leaves of the yarrow for their uses as a septic powder, which will stop bleeding or promote clotting in wounds. And I will dig up some of the wild carrot roots for a stew later. Due to the similarity in their leaves, left being the wild carrot, right being the yarrow, and their similar white florets, these two are often confused for each other, but should not be confused with their poisonous sibling, the poisonous hemlock. Please research these ones well. A little bit further on, nestled under all the wet and dry grass, I came across one thing I would never walk past. The red clover with its chevron patterned leaves is what we consider an all-rounder multivitamin. Not only is it believed to boost the immune system, help with respiratory issues, lady issues, cholesterol, it has also been linked to improving bone density. So I shall harvest some of the flower heads and dry them out at home to make teas and tinctures. My last find was rather unusual. I can't be certain, but I'm pretty sure that's wheat. And then we stumbled across the main purpose for my forage today, some rose hips that the birds have left behind. So I'm going to pick a couple of those and bring them back home to make a rose hip syrup to fight this cold. This is a wild rose or dog rose. It grows more like a bramble than the cultivated versions. It is packed full of vitamin C and has more vitamin C per weight than oranges. As it follows the exact same process, I thought I'd make some elderberry syrup at the same time, but today we will be videoing the rosehip. So as you see, if you squish it open, it's full of these tiny little seeds surrounded by fruit. These seeds have tiny little hairs on them and can be an irritant to the stomach, so we make sure we remove all that pulp at the end. You will need some preferably glass containers to decant the syrup into at the end, some sugar, I'm just using white sugar, enough water to cover your rose hips twice over, and a receptacle to heat it in. I'm using my brother's pressure cooker. And we are just going to pop in. I've got about 2 cups worth of rose hips, and I am going to heat them until soft, stirring them continuously. Oh, I missed a green bit. Get that out, we don't need that in. And keep that cooking on a very low heat for as long as it needs until the water changes colour and all of the rose hips are mushed in. After about an hour, when all the rose hips were really soft, I got impatient and pulled out my potato masher and gave them a real good smushing, and that helped the process along. Continuously smushing and stirring for the next half hour or so while the rest of the goodies were absorbed into the liquid. And after about an hour and a half of simmering time, we are ready to pull out the sieve, and I've decanted the liquid into another bowl and popping over a piece of cloth or cheesecloth or whatever you've got, as the sieve won't catch all the hairs and everything. And we are going to pop in our liquid, try not make too much mess, and we're going to allow that to strain as long as possible. Now, you normally allow it to drip. It can take hours. Sometimes I've left it overnight if I haven't been impatient, but as I said, as long as you can. This has been sitting for around 6 hours while we got on with our day. Unfortunately, I do need to finish it before the end of the night. So what I'm going to do now is just use that cheesecloth and give it a squeeze and get all the last of the juice out that I can and strain that through. Just twist and tighten, and then give it one good squeeze at the end, and as you can see, that pinky red fluid coming out, and we'll get as much of that as we can. Back into our pan on low heat and add around a cup of sugar is what I added. I kind of free poured there, and we are then going to stir that in slowly. Once all the sugar is melted in, we want to heat it up and bring it back up to the boil in order to get that syrupy effect. Keep it at a boil for approximately 3 minutes until the froth forms. Give it a good stir and then immediately take it off the heat and allow it to cool so you can decant. Once it has cooled enough to decant, pour it into your pre-steamed, boiled, however you choose to clean the bottles pre-hand, and pop them into the bottles, seal the lid, and I would consume within about 2 to 3 months, although we go through it very quickly. I had some left over, so I made 2 little bottles for friends of mine who I know are suffering as well. These are just reused little baby whiskey bottles. Thank you for coming back. I hope you've enjoyed this recipe today and joining me for a little winter forage to see what nature's larder has left over for us. Come see us again for more recipes.